Hey, welcome to today's edition of Text Tuesday by Full Sail University. My name is Luis Garcia. I'm the Vice President of Emerging Technologies here at Full Sail. And today we have a special guest, Bryan Berger. He's a Senior Product Designer at Discord. Here's a quick background for Bryan. Bryan is a graduate of Full Sail University from 2009 with a degree in Web Design and Development. Actually, he's from our very first class of WDD. And Bryan very recently joined Discord as a senior product designer. Prior to Discord, Bryan spent 5 years at General Assembly, a very successful tech education provider. And at General Assembly, Bryan held several roles in UX design, engineering, and product design. Bryan also founded, designed, and developed a community, a website for New York hackers called NY Hackathons, a website with curated list of New York hackathons to improve the registration and turnout. And prior to JA, Bryan spent 4 years at Ask Applications, a very large software company, as a product designer and front-end developer. Ask Applications is one of the world's largest distributors of desktop applications, browser extensions, and PC optimization software. So Bryan loves giving back, and he, in addition to things like this, he also participates as a mentor for events at Adobe, with Adobe and Apple. So welcome to Tech Tuesday, Bryan.
Hey, Luis, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Bryan, always like to start with the same question. How did you first fall in love with technology, and what do you love the most about it?
Yeah, I kind of think about this one. I think a lot about my dad and just my upbringing. My dad was the kind of person that exposed me pretty early to things like electronics. Taught me how to solder as a pretty young kid. How to kind of build stuff, rocketry, model building, these sorts of things, and it just got me into the kind of craft side of building things. And I was kind of lucky enough to be in the generational pool of people that was coming up when the internet was also relatively new, which is essentially the new frontier of our time. And that combination of things, as a young kid, I couldn't really pass up exploring technology. It was kind of just fell in my lap and something I ran with. And in terms of like things that I love the most about it, um, it never stops. It's a never-ending set of challenges. There's always something around every corner, especially if you're interested in the overall making of stuff from the design perspective and the engineering perspective. Um, and I personally just love to understand how things work, take things apart, put them back together, maybe in a different order. Um, and another thing about technology, and in particular, like software, is the ability to just, within a few hours, really come up with an idea. We did this a lot of hackathons, release that idea or ship it, learn about it, or learn feedback and gather feedback on it, and then reiterate on that and essentially push it out to the world in a matter of hours, in some cases completely for free, which is a kind of a revolutionary concept. Prior to our time. So yeah, that's kind of, I guess, why I love it and will continue to.
Thank you. We're excited to have you here, and especially somebody from such a large communications platform as Discord. But just in case some folks are not familiar, will you explain to our audience what is Discord and how do you contribute to its success?
Yeah, so I've been at Discord for about 6 or 7 months now, and the general mission of the company is to essentially create a digital space for everyone to find belonging, whether you're into gaming, which is where the company originated, kind of in that genre, or you're into design. There's a lot of design communities on Discord. It's a kind of a platform that allows you to interact via voice, text, and video services, and it's used by millions of people globally, including myself. I was an avid user of Discord years before joining. One of the reasons why I decided to look at Discord as a company, and people use it to start communities, local communities, or global, related to all kinds of things, as I mentioned, including engineering, design related communities, and gaming, and a bunch of other topics. So that's kind of the quick synopsis.
I actually got to know Discord because my children use it a lot, and
Yeah.
uh, it's because very much started with the gaming community.
Yeah, and over the past year or so, throughout the pandemic, a lot of people, really craved a space to meet people, and obviously, we weren't doing much of that in person to person. So Discord kind of like grew twofold over the last year with, the ability to just hang out, essentially find your place. Um, and there's quite a few communities, hundreds of thousands, even millions, I believe. Of different communities, or you could start your own with your own group of friends. So it's a
Hmm.
relatively low barrier to entry.
That's great. And what do you do at Discord?
Yeah, good question. No, at Discord, I lead up the design systems team. So it's a particular kind of like specialty role within product design and product engineering as a broader department. And my role kind of bridges the gap between engineering, the code base, and design and our design processes. And my core responsibility is to essentially improve how we build things at scale. Since I've joined, the company's grew like 2x, as I mentioned. We've taken on
Wow.
more designers, hyper growth, a lot of excitement, a lot of things that we want to be able to do. And it's really difficult to design software when you don't have a foundational, like a strong foundation, right? A good scaffold to build on. So I primarily focus on that aspect of it. So our main stakeholders are our other designers, our product managers, and our product engineers, and yeah, I'm really focused on the design experience, the developer experience, and building a system to help us essentially not only scale but ship higher quality things faster and more efficiently. And if we ever do need to make sweeping changes or modify the system, we can do that with confidence and accuracy.
That's great. Um, you had a long career now, and you've done this product designer thing across different companies, from software companies to education companies, now a communications
Yep.
platform. And so, if you can describe what a product designer is, and how is it that you get to do it across multiple companies?
Yeah, I guess the core skill sets is basically one of a problem solver, and someone who can adapt a process or blend multiple processes together to uh, essentially follow through from start to end on any particular problem set, whether the problem is needing to communicate virtually, and how do you go about doing that, through video and text and chat, or through education. In my previous position, how might you learn online? How might you shop for education? Full Sail probably deals with this problem as well, or challenge rather. And it's about just, yeah, anyone who really seeks to make those things better and understand what better means, because it might mean different things to different people. Fiction might be different across your demographic. Discord has, again, millions of users, and they're not all the same. They all have different. They all come from different backgrounds, different demographics completely, and yeah, you kind of have to have a pretty open mind, be pretty willing to not always succeed, and kind of be okay with that. Not get too tied on your particular aspect of the job or of the work, because we work in pretty large teams across multiple teams even. Um, and yeah, just sort of be in it for the long haul. I think I'm maybe a little bit different in that I've worked at these companies, or my previous companies, for 4 or 5 years apiece, trying to not necessarily run away at the first time things go wrong,
Right,
but push
which
through
is not
that
not
and
common
learn about that.
in tech,
It's not
right?
very common. No, I mean, it's actually the opposite. When I was at GA, was the product design manager, so I was building the team, and it's not very uncommon to see resumes where people are at a company 3, 6 months, 8 months, 9 months, a year, 2 years maybe, and then have like 4 or 5 companies within the last 3, 4 years. And
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Find your fit and what you love, and if it's not working, obviously find a new position. But for me, just the last couple of roles, it's been, you know get hit with a challenge, and you have the opportunity to overcome it and learn from that, or just see what else is on the other side of the fence. So
Do you think it's this persistence of staying in the position long enough that makes you successful at that job?
I think that's what works for me.
Right.
Again, other people might not, that might not work for them. But yeah, I like at GA, I held like 5 different roles on design and engineering, trying to essentially fill gaps in our own team in terms of capability and like execution. And yeah, yeah. Again, I think if whatever works for you, but for me, I think I'm sort of a stubborn, persistent kind of person, at heart, anyways.
I think I like it because I think it usually takes a year for somebody to get to a point in which they understand the kind of problems they need to solve, and come up with very good solutions for them. So usually when I have an employee, it's by the second year when you really start getting the return on that first year training. And then if you pass year two into three, four, and five, then they know history and they know where things are coming from. And in the so there's a lot more effective delivery uh, of value in past year too. Is that your experience?
I think 100%. Yeah. Like
Mhm.
I've been at Discord 6 or 7 months, and it feels like my first or second week. Like there's so much to learn. It's such a
Right.
massive company. There's so many different facets of the product and the problem set that yeah. Hopefully, I'll be here for a while trying to learn that and gain that sort of historical knowledge. Again at GA, I probably had every possible role you can have, other than in the product management space. But yeah, I built a pretty good understanding of the problem from different angles. And again, I think that worked pretty well for me.
How many employees at Discord?
Oh, geez,
Do you know?
600 something.
Okay.
Yeah, when I
Uh,
was employee number 301 or something like that. So they grew pretty fast in the last 6 months.
yeah, that's a doubling in the last
Yeah,
6 months.
yeah. I mean, most people are new now, I guess you could say. In
Most people are
various
new.
different roles, right? That's not all product team, right? There's a lot of additional support roles and trust and safety and anti-abuse teams and all kinds of different aspects of the marketing, creative, these sorts of things.
Okay, so now you've been in, I would even say three different. Discord is a technology company, but it's a communications platform. It's very
Yep.
specific, and so you probably, you work in a software company, so that's pure tech, and a learning company, and
Mhm.
education, and now a communications platform. So, what do you think you do that allows you to translate your job into different industries?
Yeah, I think. Well, for me, again, personally, I need to hold some sort of affinity to that particular genre or problem space or industry. Education, something I'm super interested in. The learning how to learn, I think, is really important. Something that done me pretty well. And then in communication, that's communication in and of itself is like one of the fundamental, you know, human advantages over the rest of the animal kingdom. It's a very complex thing, and it's relatively new to take that online globally and internationally. Um, and so I think that's just a very generally an interesting place to be. It's one of the human differentiators. So um, I'd like to be a part of designing the future of that and shaping that. But I think a very transferable set of skills, as I mentioned before, problem solving. I take a very like scientific method approach. I was very interested in science and physics growing up. And just the idea of proving or disproving a hypothesis is very rewarding,
Hmm.
even if you get it wrong, because you learn something either way,
Right.
and that failure might actually compound into a better result. So it's always different every time you approach a project. You can approach it differently every time. You don't need to follow a strict method, other than you have some sort of idea or hypothesis or first principle that you're trying to either approve or disprove the assumptions you might have on it. So that general skill set, I think, it can be applied like throughout your life, and way in how you analyze and make decisions, and it serves pretty well in the sort of tech space. Again, whether it's education, gaming, communication, really doesn't matter. I think for me though, I just need to be like interested in that space.
Right.
I'm not very interested in other aspects of let's say like finance or stuff like that. I appreciate what goes into that, but I think it would be a bit too tedious for me personally.
So changing industries works for you, but would you recommend that to others?
I think so. I mean, again, if it's um, do what's right for you, right? If that's I was in education for a while. I still love it, but I wanted to try something a bit different and kind of test myself as well. And you can get pretty comfortable somewhere, right? Especially if for 5 years at the same company, you
Hmm.
kind of build up your own clout and your own like prestige potentially if you're doing a good job at a company, and it's easy to kind of coast on that and sit
Hmm.
back. But yeah, sometimes you need to just shift it up and change it up, and that's not a bad thing. I think. Again, do what works for you. I saw the opportunity at Discord, and again, it was something that I had used prior, and I had built bots and these sorts of things. So I feel like I already almost like contributed to the company. I might as well check it out. And this particular role, I wouldn't have gone for any other role either. So the sort of stars have to align, I think, for you.
Hmm.
But yeah, feel free to explore all kinds of stuff. And I've also worked a lot in freelance and had my own like contracting company actually straight out of Full Sail. And I worked in like the event space with a company called Electrical out in Scotland. I lived there for a while.
Wow.
I kind of traveled throughout Europe doing like just pure graphic design stuff, like poster work and lighting at events and like VJ stuff. So I've tried to just like take that creative aspect and apply it to as many things as possible and see what I was good at. And you quickly know when you're not that great at something, you might need to either work on it or try something else. So yeah, freelance I think was also my ability to pick and choose what I wanted to do and be really picky about it. Whereas in your day-to-day job, there's a lot more overhead working at a large company, right? You're responsible for a lot more things, and it's not going to be over in like 3 months, right? You're there for hopefully a little bit longer. Um, but yeah, I worked in like sports. I did some stuff for NASCAR.
Yeah.
Just yeah, whatever. Just jump into it and go for it.
I I love it because uh, for your full time job, you still get to experiment, but stay long enough to deliver a lot of value for the organization that hires you, and then you do side projects in other industries to even keep up with
Yeah,
your curiosity. But it's not like you're changing jobs every 9 months, and not like other folks
yeah,
do. So
yeah, yeah,
there's no
exactly.
need to do that.
But you can kind of get the feeling of that too, of like starting something new every 6 months, 9 months. I highly
Right.
recommend doing side projects. Coming from being pretty avid hackathon goer, I just love the idea of just starting something
Right.
new, spending not a huge amount of time on it, but see where you can take it, set some goals for it, and go for it. So yeah, I think use that ability, especially if you have a full time job. There's no reason why you couldn't have something on the side to play around with.
So, talk about a little bit of the role of product designer, and you're my second product designer that I get to interview lately because I interview Margaret Hag uh, recently, who is also a product designer.
Yep.
I don't like you worked at different industry and different places, and so I got to ask her that question uh, about you know being a product designer. There's a lot of, I imagine, a lot of UX involved with that, user
Mhm.
experience. And so when we think about problem solving in technology, we will often think about how we will implement the tech for the tech to solve a problem. But then once you put that product in the hands of the user, then this user comes with his own problems about the tech. And so why is UX design important in developing technology products?
Yeah, this is I guess a relatively new term, right? In the last like 10 years or so,
Right.
or less even, like UX designer as its own
Right.
particular role and its own
And career.
division. Yeah, its own
Yeah.
career, its own division of the company, its own, quarterly objectives and, all sorts of stuff at the larger companies. So yeah, I think it just comes down to pretty simple thing in that, well, a lot of this technology is relatively new to a lot of people. You know, being able to like pay your credit card online, or right from your phone, right? Those are like relatively new things to a lot of folks that haven't grown up with a phone in their hand. So how do you go about doing that? You have to like kind of extract it out of the problem, right? Like take the technology out on day one and start from the beginning, the human to human interaction. What is it that people really want to do? There might be a large number of things they want to try and do. How might you be able to simplify that? What does simplification even mean to this particular group of folks that are using it? If you're at such a wide demographic, that you might not be able to find an answer to that. So I think it's UX design or approaching problem solving from a human to human perspective is useful in anything in every industry, including like the service industry and customer service, and you know, creating a seamless process for even like picking up your food at a restaurant or ordering it online, or just the act of dining at a restaurant, or buying tickets to a concert or events. Like pretty much you can apply it to anything. Technology happens to be the medium that we're using today, or a
Right.
lot of software that we're using. That might not be the case in the future, who knows? But this particular role, I think, is a pretty long lasting one. If you don't think about those principles, you're kind of just making stuff and just chucking it out there. From the UX perspective, we tend to have these feedback loops where we're putting something out there but hoping to hear back, or following up on something, or observing a particular act in the process, seeing where the pitfalls lie, and trying to correct those either with more technology, or in some cases less. Ideally less. Ideally you're making things simpler to maintain on your end as well, which will help
Right.
you improve things overall. So it's like a huge spider web of cause and effect. With technology, that's why I prefer, when I work on the systems related things, like the infrastructure side of it, is start really simple with like pretty minimal surface area, because it will get complex on its own. That's just the nature of technology at this particular junction. So
Right.
yeah, I like to just sort of extract that stuff out from the problem if we can. I would prefer solutions that require no technology. Maybe there's some other way of solving the problem, or very simple technology, like sending an SMS message, or be getting a notification for something, just something like a very simple interaction, rather than having to go like through like a 10-step flow to like complete a simple task. So you
That's
got
why
to.
you said that you start with removing the technology out of the problem definition.
I personally do, because in some cases it creates constraints for you that you might not want to have early on, right? I'd like to let us figure out what the technology should be, rather than here's a set of technologies that we support. Do something with that. Well, now you're thinking the problem in like the reverse order, right? You already have the solution in its parts, and now you're trying to walk that back into fitting it into the problem space, which is like trying to put a circle in a square kind of thing. So,
Of course.
um, so yeah.
So it's all about problem solving, right? So,
Uh,
so I always like to ask this question about problem solving, and uh, because the technologies that we manage are the combination of decisions that are solving different problems, and some of those problems are obvious to people, and some of the problems are not so obvious. So, so technologies, you always are solving a problem that perhaps people never even think about. And so, can you share an example of a problem that you help solve that perhaps people don't know about, but you are particularly proud of?
um, yeah, this definitely a tough question. I think when I was at GA, we were working primarily like on a learning platform, so a
Mhm.
software-based solution for shipping content and consuming content through your computer, right? And speaking of user experience, I had the opportunity to follow up with a particular client that was using, or a user that was using the product, and they happened to be from the United States Department of Defense. So the DoD was one of our clients, and
Okay.
this particular individual was responsible for had like security clearances and worked with like special forces, and they were training up on things like cybersecurity and like data science that they were going to use for their for their position or help train their staff on these particular subjects. And I was talking with this guy, and um, yeah, I think I didn't know we had users like that at the time that were in those types of positions and working for the government that is essentially working for us, right, keeping us safe. So that was sort of an interesting thing that not most people would correlate to that position. That I was sort of at least this very very tiny part of helping train the government on keeping us safe out there.
That's so cool.
And help modernize our government. I think they have a pretty long way to go in that achievement, but um, being a very small part of helping modernize the systems which our government uses to operate. And this particular individual was like, yeah, the government doesn't pay as good as big tech companies in Silicon Valley and so forth, but the work is more rewarding. So I thought that was an interesting takeaway, and something I wouldn't have learned if wasn't in that position at that particular time. So yeah, that's kind of an interesting story. Um,
Oh, thank you for
yeah,
sharing that. And there's the other side of that equation, in which we go to solve certain problems and we never get to solve them because the
yeah.
technology is not there, or because there's not enough time, get cut out of scope, or in a feature that couldn't be implemented. And is there an example like that of a problem that you didn't get to solve?
Yeah, I have a pretty good relationship with like failure and not being able to do stuff. It's something you learn like pretty early on. Is like not everything you do is good and going to be is the accepted solution or the thing that's actually built, or part of your idea is maybe tabled for later, and then later never comes. That happens quite often, or just gets pushed down the line, in some backlog somewhere. So you kind of have to have a bit of a tougher skin, I think, when it comes to um, your wants and needs working for the customer's wants and needs. They don't always align, and that's one major aspect if thinking about getting into this position is you don't just design things maybe once, twice, or three times, and everything's great and you kind of move on to the next thing. So I don't spend a lot of time thinking about like dang, like I wish that one thing we could have done right. But there are some cases, like one of the things I was thinking about was my first ever like freelance position. I had to be like 20 years old or 21 years old or something, and it was just like a botched like everything, like execution, communication. I was working with a company. I was based in Germany, but they had their resources in Eastern Europe and other places. And I was getting called at like 3, 4 in the morning.
Wow.
And this was a Flash project. It was a long time ago, and the tech was like it was like an experimental marketing site for a pretty big company, and I ended up finishing the job and did pretty well. But in the back of my mind, I was like, I wish I could have iterated more on this particular thing. It was fairly complex. It was the software would take a picture of you and then it would like build designs around you, and that would you'd be able to like get that as a custom print, and it was a lot of stuff that was like pretty experimental at the time, and the execution was like okay, but there's a lot of like refinement I wish I would have done, um, and then just like I learned a lot from that and how to like work with clients better. It was like my first major contract deal. How to negotiate the pricing and all these sorts of things. So, you know, you learn a lot from that.
Big Flash platform for Eastern Europe.
Yeah, yeah, it came out pretty cool, but it was there's a lot to be desired.
That's so cool. So now at Discord is pretty much a global platform at this point, and as you said, it started in gaming, but right now is enabling people to communicate and connect and work in
Yeah.
many industries. And um, for what I read, is doing really really well. And why is that important to you to be able to help people communicate better?
Yeah, communication again for me is something that I continually work on. Personal communication. It's tough. I think a lot of people, especially younger folks, which is a large demographic, have a hard time communicating in general, especially as like a young teenager or young adult kind of thing, and finding a place where you can grow those skills as an alternative kind of social interaction that is fairly new. I think even just hanging out with friends, watching a fight, or talking about a YouTube video, or whatever. It's a pretty cool place to interact, and you can interact in multiple forms, whether it's video or text or chat, or all of them all at the same time, or voice rather. And yeah, it comes from a series of, I would say it's a sibling or byproduct of many other services that came before it, for like IRC, Ventrilo's, TeamSpeak, Mumble. There's quite a few of these like voice video platforms, and Discord kind of put them all together in a fairly ergonomic way. And yeah, it's just something that I personally really appreciated. And again, I think communication is our key differentiator on this planet. So it's like really the beginning. What's the next? Like, what's Discord in 5 years? What's Discord at 1 billion users? What does that look like? And it's not that far away. So a lot of interesting things to work through.
That's great. So I think to find success, one thing that you have to have, the people that are successful are very self-aware, and they understand their strength and how to use them, and turn them into superpowers. What do you think is your superpower?
Yeah. Yeah. Self-awareness is definitely important, especially identifying things that you might not be great at, um, and then you need a lot of work on. I remember when I first started looking for like to go to school for this sort of thing. Um, 2005 or something like that. There, the programs were like fine art, drawing, painting, or like more computer science, hardware related languages. Wasn't a lot of like what I do today. So I knew for sure I wasn't that great at drawing, um, or animation or any of that sort of thing. Um, but I kind of exposed myself to that stuff, and gained a love for things like photography, abstract art, which is like not really fine art, but something that I was good at, and it was like a creative thing that allowed me to express creativity. So I kind of just like walked through. I took a digital media class also at Full Sail, and just was exposed to a lot of different things. So I think exposure is really important. But in terms of like superpower, I kind of alluded to this before, but the ability to essentially like manifest out of nothing, right? Like when you're creating software, you're typing on a computer, and you're literally like inputting energy, or like pixels, or essentially little dots of light, right? Um, and you're creating like from pure energy, which is pretty interesting, I think, when you think of it at like the atomic level. And you're able to just build from nothing,
Right.
and and put that out there and have it become something. And that's again a relatively new power. And I love to create stuff all the time, so I'm always creating for my Discord community a bunch of bots and stuff like that to make our lives easier, more fun of an experience. Um, and I just love that process. And I think it parallels pretty well to like extreme sports. You get the dopamine rush when you successfully build something and you've worked through the struggle and you get to the end. So it's
Right.
very similar to that adrenaline kind of feeling again for me. But yeah, I think that go with that.
Thank you. Okay. Um, so lots of opportunities in technology, and but working in technology requires not only the skill, which is you know important, but also curiosity and tenacity. What would you tell somebody interested in pursuing a career in technology?
Well, if you're interested, there's no better time to start, really, than now, than the moment. You can start relatively small. I had many conversations about about this with students and folks that I mentor in the Adobe community that are like changing careers. We did a lot of this work at GA as well. Somebody who's like an accountant that wants to become a designer or or a tech lead or like an engineer, and shifts between wildly different careers. It's possible. Everything is possible. I've seen people do it firsthand, coming from not having a job, like unemployment, and going to earning a certain amount, 80K or 90K or something like that a year in a relatively short amount of time. And I would say, well, A, don't be in it solely for the paycheck, because right now it's a pretty hot in demand skill, so it pays pretty well. But um, you have to be in it for more than that. And I think it's the love of technology and the love of problem solving. And yeah, start now. Like when I started, Google wasn't a thing. So you could, as a kid, like you just had to like mess up. And project-based learning is great, I think, over like just reading a book or an article on the topic. Is build a game or build a blog or build something, and you learn a lot of things in when you hit those struggle milestones, right before you finish a milestone, or these like struggle points. And there's numerous ways to turn that into a career, whether you sell your APIs online or rent them out, even, or you
People do
do.
that. People
People do that. Yeah, yeah.
rent APIs.
Yeah, yeah, you can build an API that, let's say, like tracks the stars or something, or the moon's orbit, and open it up as an API, and you can sell tiers access to your API. That's like an interesting thing I actually learned not too recently that people did. So there's like there's almost no excuse, right? You can
Right.
there's ways to make a career out of that. You see people on like Etsy building, making their own way, right? Making cupcakes or soaps or whatever you make.
Right.
And the same goes, I think, for technology, but 100x, right? Um, if you're somebody that's inclined to be more of a designer, you can do freelance work. You can, bid for projects online, and you can be a designer that builds software or not, a graphic designer or something similar, or work in print or branding. Or so there's like so many different opportunities, and I think if you're interested in it and you have that discipline to kind of push through and learn something, just do it. Start. Highly
That's
recommend
awesome.
it.
So we're getting to the end of our talk here. Thank you so much. Always love to learn from the folks that we interview, because there's so many exciting things happening in technology right now. It's like you said, it's the best time to start. It's right now. There's a lot
Yeah.
going on, and especially this particular moment in time. There's a lot of technology that has been built for the last 50 years that we get to build on top of, and solve
Yeah.
problems we couldn't solve before, and solve problems we couldn't even frame before. And so what do you see in technology today that gets you really excited about the future?
I'm excited about what's going on in the space industry, like
Hmm.
the stuff Elon Musk and folks are doing, going to Mars. I think is pretty interesting. When I was a kid, I was obsessed with like the moon landing and how do you send people to another planet?
Right.
Like what? It's not necessarily about getting, like, it's not necessarily the fact that you're at the other planet. It's how you got there, and getting to Mars. I mean, there's going to be a lot of interesting jobs, to say the least, but also a lot of interesting challenges to solve there with, on the scientific side of things, propulsion, fuel, keeping people alive in space. A lot of really cool code is going to be written for that. A lot of
Yes.
efficient, performant code. A lot of things are going to need to be invented, but there will be things that they build upon, right? Like the helicopter that's flying around, or the drone that's flying around on Mars, has a ton of open source code on there, including the Linux kernel and some other things, um, which is fascinating. There's
Yes.
people that unknowingly probably contributed to some of these things, and their code is on Mars right now. That, like, it gives me goosebumps. So I think, what's after that, and how do we train for that? You're talking about AR and VR spaces, or how you train to fly to another planet, and the simulations. There's going to be some cool stuff built there, and we get to reap a lot of the benefits of that as a society, as we did with the space race, in the '60s. is all the cool stuff that they build from that. So I'm looking forward to those successful missions, uh, and yeah, I think there's gonna be some cool stuff along the way.
Well, thank you so much, Brian, for taking time of your busy life to share it with us. And I want to thank everyone that is attended our stream today. And please come back in a few weeks. We'll have another episode. And thank you very much, and goodbye.
Yeah, thank you. Have a good one. Thanks for coming, guys.